Welcome to episode 7 of the Chall podcast. My name is Preston Byers, and I'm with Justin Binkowski. How are you doing, Bink?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Doing pretty well. Today we're going to be talking about Stage 2, Week 2. We're going to be recapping what happened in the last week in the Call of Duty League. As well, we're going to predict the next week, Week 3 of the second stage. And we're going to be talking about some specific matches, including the Minnesota Rockers' first match with Standy, their new addition, as well as the LA Thieves having a pretty rough week with their new addition, Venom, as well as Optic, obviously not having a good week either. And finally, we'll be wrapping up with some patch and balance changes and the new meta and everything like that. So let's get into it with the matches from the past week. On Thursday, March 25th, we had two matches. We had Dallas Empire versus the Paris Legion and Optic Chicago versus the Minnesota Rocker. Obviously, we should talk about this match first, the Optic Chicago versus Minnesota Rocker, because the result was really surprising. And like we said, this was Standy's first match with the Rocker. He replaced Major Maniac in the lineup, and they kind of kicked Optic's ass. 250 to 81 in hardpoint, 6-4 S&D, and in Optic's best game mode control, they won 3-1. What do you think about Standy coming in and immediately making an impact?
Uh, I mean, pretty surprising to be honest. I know Standy had success in the amateur scene both last year in MW and then earlier this year, specifically right before he got picked up. But you know, Minnesota had a tough week on paper coming into this with matches against Optic and Dallas. They just made a change. They were already previously a team that had struggled in hard point, and they're going up against first, Optic team, which, even though they didn't play as well this week, you would have expected them, and they have in the past been good at hard points. So you would have figured they might have lost the search to Minnesota since Minnesota's been good at search earlier this year, but Optic probably should have taken the respawn and won 3-1 just like beforehand, but it's not at all what happened. Standy dropped a 1.52 KD in this match. Everybody on Minnesota went positive. Both accuracy and Priesthood dropped a 1.15, and that was the lowest on the team. Attach had a 1.21. And then you look at Optic, and everybody had a negative KD. Formal had the highest with 0.92. So KD's not everything, like we always say, but paints the picture here that they kind of just got dominated, and it's really not what people expected. So this, I believe they said on broadcast too that Standy's KD was like the highest for a debut series in CDL history, which is also kind of impressive. But yeah, I think that was an eye opener for a lot of people. Standy looked really good, and Minnesota as a whole looked good. Priesta looked more comfortable in the AR role, and I think obviously we'll get into Optic struggles a little bit later, but if Minnesota has taken down some of these teams that were really strong earlier in the year and they're able to be a contender, it only helps the league with more strong teams, and FaZe is still undefeated. So maybe this is a sign that Minnesota could be a team to challenge FaZe. It'll obviously be a tough task, but you never know. Could be good sign for Minnesota though.
Well, with Minnesota's S&D game, they're obviously in stage one they were one of the best teams in S&D, and we know that FaZe is incredibly strong in that game mode. So if they could take a search off of them, that obviously helps them a lot. They showed a lot of promise in stage one with Maniac. They went 3-2, and they even beat the Empire early on in the stage. So I think the Rocker has a lot of promise, and to see what they did this week, that's really impressive. Speaking
And
of the Empire, is there anything you want to add on to that?
I was just going to point out that, I liked Minnesota's roster beforehand, and I still think Major Maniac's a good player, but obviously something was just going on with the roles there, and, Standy was that fresh blood that they needed and switched things up with Priesta, and I just wanted to, point out I still think Major Maniac's a good player, and I
Mm-hmm.
look forward to seeing him back in the league at some point, but this new Minnesota roster is looking scary.
Yep. The first match of that day was the Dallas Empire versus the Paris Legion. We both picked Dallas, and Dallas ended up winning. The Empire lost the search, but won the respawns. Any takeaways from this series?
Yeah, so that's just that overlying theme, as we'll get into later with Dallas's match against Minnesota. But they didn't win a search this week. They went, they lost it to Paris and they lost both of them to Minnesota. So that's something you wouldn't really expect to see from this team, especially with those search and destroy guys on that roster. And I think that's the biggest takeaway. Even though Dallas won the match, something's got to change with their search. Before this week, they went to that Game 5 with Seattle, which Seattle's looking good. So I'm not taking anything away from them, but just based on the players on both rosters, you would likely expect Dallas to be a better search team than Seattle. So the fact that it came down to that, Game 5, round 11, Seattle comes a few milliseconds away from being able to defuse the bomb. And then from there, after the week, they still don't improve in search and don't win a search in the following week. That's something we're going to have to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the stats were from last season, but I think Dallas was a really good search team last year. I mean, they have really Shotzi and Illy were obviously search stars, and I guess Hook was to an extent, like when he wasn't playing Halo and he couldn't play in the CWL, and the leadership that Clay and Krim brought. But this season, something just doesn't seem to be clicking. They obviously got to the grand finals of the first major. I just don't know, like, if they have like the potential they did last season, because so far this season they haven't looked great, and they were not even close to beating FaZe. I'm not sure if there is a team uh, closer to beating FaZe than they are, but they weren't close at all, and I think that's obviously disappointing for them considering they're defending world champions and they have high expectations for themselves. Um, let's talk about the Friday matches. We had two of those: the Los Angeles Thieves versus the London Royal Ravens, and the New York Subliners versus the LA Gorillas. Let's talk about the Thieves London match. This was obviously the first match for Venom. He replaced Temp in the starting lineup. What did you think of London's 3-1 victory over the Thieves?
I was surprised by it too. I admittedly don't really remember the Friday matches because it was a pretty hectic day with everything else going on at work, so I wasn't paying full attention to them and wasn't able to watch the VOD backs for them. But I just know that's not what a lot of people were expecting. London's been that team that's been going through changes all season with, visa issues, whatever, all the problems they've been having behind the scenes. They made more changes with bringing in Paul X, so they're still like a fresh roster. And although Thieves also had made a change, I think most people expected them to take that series. But yeah, both hard points were close. Los Angeles won map 1, 250 to 243 on checkmate, and then London won the next three. But map 4, Moscow hardpoint was close too. It was 250 to 245. But other than that, London took the search 6-2 and the control 3-0. I think that was a really quick map. I don't remember. I'm pretty sure I was talking to Scott.
I think it was the quickest one this season.
Yeah, I remember I was editing a story and I was focusing on that, and Scott was writing the recap for it, and I had closed out of the story and I went to I started editing before the control started, and then I closed out of it and the control was already over. I was like, what the hell happened?
Yeah. I don't know if they confirmed this on the stream, but I guess the idea was that this was the quickest control of the season because London essentially won every round within the first minute or so of the round. So yeah, that was really impressive. And London obviously clutched up on that game 4 in Moscow, a hard point. I tweeted during this series that I was really impressed with Zed, especially with how little practice he's had compared to a lot of players with his team. He comes in on short notice for the first major to replace Alex, and they obviously only have that one match in the first major. But then in stage 2, they bring in Paul X, and they seem to be a really solid team now. And I think he has done a really good job in his role, and it's not that they have all of this top end talent where the talent like say Optic, you expect those guys to win a certain amount because of how talented and how skilled they are. When you look at this London roster, especially when you're comparing it to many of these other rosters in the league, they don't have that top end talent that you would expect, but they're winning anyways, and I think that's really impressive.
Yeah, and I think I don't remember where it was said or some. I can't remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure Clay brought up like Zed playing with Dylan or something along those lines. Like they should play together for as long as they can or the rest of their career. He said some. I don't want to misquote him, and I can't find it on Twitter. But it was something along those lines where he kind of brought up the point that Dylan's seen, arguably the most success in his career when he's playing with Zed, especially on that reciprocity team in Black Ops 4. And London they ended the season last year as a top 4 team, and Zed wasn't on London with him then, but I just thought it was an interesting point that Clay brought up that they seem to work well together. So regardless of what Alex is dealing with behind the scenes, that might be a sub duo we see for the rest of the year on London.
Yeah, it's interesting too because obviously this isn't the roster that they had in mind when they
Nope.
began the season, and in Paul X's post game interview, I believe it was after this match, he said that the team brought him in and treated him like family immediately. So the culture and like the chemistry is there, and I mean they're obviously getting used to having new people come in and out and changing their roster on short notice. So it's really impressive that they continue to do this, and they're having a lot more success in stage two than they were in stage one.
Yep.
The other match of the day was the Subliners versus the Gorillas. Neither of us really thought the Gorillas had much of a shot, especially with how poorly they played in the first week of stage two, and the Subliners looked really good. What did you think of the Subliners winning 3-1 here?
Yeah, the Gorillas only played that London
Hmm.
team in Pollux's debut in the previous week, and they got stomped 3-0. So most of us didn't, or most people and both of us didn't really have many expectations for this series in particular. But New York came out and got the job done. I believe, yeah, the Gorillas won the search, and New York won both of the respawns. So we've said before we think the Gorillas should be a good search team. If that's how they're going to succeed, is probably through search play, structured kind of like the World War II team. But yeah, other than that, it looked like Nicole or geez, I can't talk right now. New York got the job done.
New York also kicked off Saturday's matches against London. We both picked New York, and New York ended up winning 3-1. The biggest thing about the series was the near full sail, which I think people are calling a full sail, but that is incorrect
Yeah,
because
you can't call it full style.
yeah, it's like a semi sail or something like that. But it was a 5-1 comeback on Express. New York was down 5-1 to London, and they come back and win 6-5. Uh, really impressive. I mean, I mean, I don't know how many full sales or even 5-1s there's been, 5-1 comebacks there's been in CWL or CDL history, but there's not many, especially at the highest level when you have two fully pro teams. So, really impressive. Any lasting thoughts from the Subliners Ravens game?
I think you hit the nail on the head there with that search. That was kind of huge momentum swing. London did respond by winning that control. But that was the only map they won. New York took both hard points, even though London scored over 200 points in both hard points. And the search, like we said, it was a 5-1 comeback, so it did go around 11. So all the maps were close, which is a testament to how much better this new London team is looking. But New York still closed things out in the end. Just looking at the KDs from the series real quick, Paul X dropped a 1.17. That was the highest for both London and in the whole lobby. But his three teammates both dropped 0.96, 0.97, and 0.98. So they were just barely negative. And on the other side, Clayster had the highest KD for New York with a 1.04. Mac was a 1.01, Diamond Con a 0.99, and ASIN was a 0.91. So it was a pretty close series in the slaying department too, as in the maps. Which is, I think, obviously New York comes away with the win, but it's a good sign for London fans and to see them play against a team like that, because what they had played against the Gorillas, the Thieves, who just made a change, and then New York. So that means they have to play FaZe still, which will obviously be it should be a tough match on paper. So it'll be interesting to see how London performs. But yeah, that's basically all takeaways from that.
Speaking of FaZe, they played the Thieves. They crushed them like they do with most teams they play. Do you have any thoughts on the Thieves in particular? Like, we don't really need to go over FaZe because we can only say so much. They're really good. They keep crushing teams. They don't seem to be letting up at all, and they actually seem to be improving. But for the Thieves, they go 0-2 this week. The first loss, they lose to London 3-1. And then here, they obviously that's a really tough matchup to play FaZe. They lose 3-0. What are your thoughts on how Venom has looked in this roster and if he's an improvement over Temp?
I think in particular, I can't remember who tweeted it, but I saw something on the timeline where it was kind of like you can't really judge Venom this soon off 2 maps just because, like people last year were early in the season. I know it was on LAN, but early in the MW season last year, people were saying Shotzi was a bust. And then, he comes around and wins MVP. So I'm not saying Venom's going to necessarily do that, but I think, we can't jump the gun and really judge him off these 2 maps just yet. I think there might be more issues with the Thieves than just that one change. I'm not sure what the exact fix is or what they might need to do, but I think it's going to take time. And, FaZe just asserted their dominance and showed just how strong they are. And I love finishing moves. And that was one thing I was going to ask you to show on stream here was the finishing move, then the control, but I forgot. So we're not going to be able to do that.
No, give me a second. I'll figure it
out. But yeah, I think we definitely need to see more finishing moves. I feel very strongly about this, especially when it's this dominant. Like FaZe was so far ahead; they had won the first 2 maps, already had a 2-0 map count, 2-0 leading control, a dominant life advantage. Like in that situation, if anybody gets mad about them going for a finishing move, I don't know what to say to them. I think that's the optimal time for it. Like obviously you don't want to see them going for it. If they're going for a finishing move round 11 1v1, that's just crazy. But I think this was a perfect opportunity for it, and I love to see it.
All right, I got it pulled up on the stream.
You don't even need audio. It's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, just look at that. If you know nothing about competitive COD and you're tuned into that match and you're seeing that, you're like, holy shit, what just happened? That was cool. I need to see more of that. And I think that's something that would be really cool to see moving forward. Do I think it's going to happen every match? No. Might not even happen every stage, but it's obviously a rare occurrence, and I was super excited to see it, and I want to see it more. When acceptable, when applicable.
Yeah, I has there been very many? I know there hasn't been many, but I can't think of one. I know FaZe kind of tried to do it to Crim6 in the last match of the major, but
yeah, they didn't.
I don't think they pulled it off.
Not in Cold War, but I remember Simp did it. It was either Simp or BZ. Somebody on FaZe last year did it on Arklov Peak. It might have been against Attach on New York.
I don't remember. Benzie said exactly. Dallas did it last year, or maybe Simp did it against Dallas.
Doing it. I don't remember that. I remember somebody getting assassinated on Arklov Peak though, and it was awesome.
Yeah, Jim got assassinated on Arklov Peak too.
He sure did. We could show that that clip too, but we'll save that for another time.
Yeah. If you send it to me, I can show it at the end of the thing. So yeah, we love assassinations, finishing moves. They're just awesome, and people should just do it all the time. Toronto and LAG, they finished out Saturday. Toronto won 3-2. LAG, this is a 0-2 week, so they're 0-3 in the entire stage. And Toronto, I believe, this is the first win with Insight on the roster, if I'm not mistaken.
I
Uh,
believe so. They only played once this week, and the week before that,
they lost
they lost to
to,
Thieves and FaZe.
yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah, first win with Insight after benching Methods.
yeah,
What'd you
they're
think
one
of
and two.
this? What'd you think of this series?
I thought the biggest takeaway for me personally, like a lot of the maps were close. Tor- uh, Toronto takes both hard points, and the main takeaway was that Toronto won Game 5 Surge on Raid 6-0. And I don't know their exact record on it, but I know Gorillas have played a lot of Raid Search this year. I believe it was on Raid Search the last time Gorillas played Toronto, where like Silly tweeted out at Methods about his coaching link or whatever. You remember what
Yeah,
I'm talking about?
yeah, I do.
So yeah, like they played Raid earlier this year, and to get 6-0'd like that in Map 5, that was like an eye opener for me. I was very surprised by that, especially after Los Angeles had taken Game 2 on Express 6-2. Um, so yeah, I picked Toronto to win this series just because I think uh, after Gorillas had lost to London, I was a little like hesitant to pick them for
Hmm.
anything. I could have seen them maybe winning this because Toronto is still a new lineup, but Toronto got the job done.
I'm pretty sure that Raid Search was the only map that FaZe lost in Search in Stage 1, and I'm pretty sure it was against Toronto. So,
I believe that's right.
so maybe they're just a really good Raid Search team. I don't know.
Maybe.
So maybe I don't know. Maybe it was like a veto situation. They couldn't get the map they wanted, or LAG couldn't get the map they wanted, and it just happened to be Raid. But they obviously need to pick it up, and that's a disappointing loss, and it puts them in a really big hole for the rest of the second stage. And let's move on to the final three matches of the week. Paris Legion, they go 0-2 this week with a 3-0 loss to Seattle, who have looked much improved in
Yeah.
Stage 2. What do you think is the change for Seattle? Because neither of us expected them to do anything um, in this second stage after they got first rounded at the major. So what is it that is helping them do so much better?
I really wish I had a solid answer to that, but I don't. They obviously didn't make a roster change. The meta kind of shifted a little bit, but I think the biggest difference, at least in this particular series, is that Gunless just absolutely went off. He dropped a 1.6, which is like almost unheard of. Although this was a 3-0 and it was fairly convincing. You still don't really like Standy dropped a 1.52 in his debut, and everyone was like, "That's an absurd KD." And then Gunless just comes back with a 1.6, and it's like, whoa, what the heck's going on here? So, yeah, I really don't have a solid answer there, but I'm really happy to see Seattle figuring it out. Obviously, they didn't get the job done against Dallas when they played in the first week, but this is a big turnaround for them, and I'm excited to see if they're still able to keep it up. We'll see them play Optic this week, which we'll have plenty to talk about that later. And they're technically tied for first right now in their group, so definitely going to be interesting to see how the rest of the stage 2 group play shakes out and how they to see. I'm excited to see if they continue to play well.
Yeah, they really needed this too because
Yep.
they had very few points, CDL points. Obviously, it's not the biggest thing early on in the season, but considering the top or the bottom four teams in the league don't even get to make the championship tournament, they need those points to get in that top eight, and this would be a perfect opportunity to do so. They get I think 30. They get a certain amount of points for each. They get 10 points for each win, and uh, basically like 10 extra points for every round that they win in the major or whatever. It's essentially like that because of the placing tiers. So a good stage two group play result and a good stage two major might put them in the middle of the pack and help them out as they head into the back half of the season. And then we also have the Dallas Empire versus the Minnesota Rocker. Standy again, helping out his team upset the Empire, which is two stages in a row. Minnesota were the only team to beat the Empire in group play last stage when Dallas finished first in, I believe it was Group A, I want to say. But either way, Minnesota was the only team to do so, and they won again 3-2. What what did you think of Standy in this series after he had like the monster performance against Optic, and what do you think is Dallas's issue with Minnesota? I guess.
Um, looking at the stats, Stanley didn't technically have a phenomenal series in this one just because he dropped a .85, went -15. But I think the biggest contributor to that is he went 31 and 40 in the control. And I know our cities in particular and other people were like, "Holy cow, this guy died 40 times in one map!" Like, and it was not in a bad way. It was just like, "Wow, this guy's getting a ton of engagements," because he went 31 and 40 and he dropped 7,000 damage. So like he was just like all over the place in Dallas's face. And yeah, so like you might see that 31 and 40 scoreline and be like, taken back by it, and that obviously negatively impacts his KD for the series. But that's one of the examples where you can't take KD to heart, and it doesn't always mean anything. And the other big thing, obviously, we kind of touched on earlier, is just Dallas's search, man. Minnesota does the same thing from their last upset. They win the control, and they win both S&Ds. Sure, Dallas wins both hard points against Minnesota. Minnesota hasn't been a good hard point team all year, even though they beat Optic with this new lineup earlier in the week. But again, it was search and destroy. Dallas going 0-3 in search. That was pretty surprising to me.
And the last match of the day, or the last match of the weekend, excuse me, Optic Chicago versus the Florida Mutineers. We both thought should be a pretty easy match for Optic. We didn't pick before this match. We picked before every match last week, so we didn't get to see or react to Optic's first loss. But even then, I still thought, okay, Optic had a bad series. Standy had some incredible series. That it's kind of a fluke. Well, they get swept by Florida, and it's actually really bad for them in the group play standings because, I mean, they could essentially now not even start in winners bracket for the
Yep.
major. So it's a huge loss for them. What did you think of Optic this week as a whole and in this series?
Yeah, I mean, I think if anybody said before this week that Optic was going to go 0-6 in map count, I don't think if anybody said they were going to go 0-2, I think people would have been super shocked and been like, "Nah, you're crazy." And then if somebody said they were going to go 0-6 in map count as well as going 0-2, they would have been like, "No way." But that's what happened, and I really don't know what the fix is. Might have been just been an off week, who knows? But definitely was unexpected, and even though it was a 3-0 series, all three maps in this one were close. The raid hard point was 250, 250 to 221. Checkmate search went to round 11, 4-165 with it was a 2v3 for Skies and Slacked, and Skies got a two-piece. So that was a theme throughout the search where it's just Florida was clutching up when they needed to. And then Checkmate Control, Optic went up 2-1 in that one, and Florida won in offense in round 4 and closed things out in the 5th and final round. So obviously, yeah, it was pretty surprising result, and all eyes are going to be on Optic this week to see how they bounce back and see if they're able to figure out what happened in this last week.
I don't have any explanation because from what people are saying about their scrims, they look really good.
Yeah,
So it's not that's not translating to practice. The practice is still good. They're still I know wins don't count for anything in scrims, but it's not like they're getting crushed in it. So really, who knows? I would expect them to bounce back. I don't. They're not a team that just kind of rolls over and doesn't do anything. They're gonna bounce back. There's so much talent on that team. Uh, so who knows? But that loss puts them in fifth place in Group B.
yep,
At 1-2, they're only ahead of Paris, and they have two matches coming up this week, so they have the ability to get back in a winning record for this group play. But I mean, it's not looking too hot right now.
Yeah. They definitely put themselves in a difficult situation to make winners bracket. It's going to be they got to win both their matches and potentially get some help. So, like I said earlier, obviously Optic has a lot of eyes watching them already, but even more people are going to be watching this week to see how they bounce back or how they perform.
All right, let me pull up this gym clip so we can transition into the next part of our show. Uh, you know, OBS over here and full screen. Twitter's quality is horrific, but whoa.
Do you want me to send it to you on Slack?
No, it's okay. I mean, we get the gist of it.
Oh, this looks terrible. Oh, it's better now. Yeah, so what you guys are watching is a quality gameplay from me assassinating youngest Jim. We had talked about practicing search before this, and a situation arose where I was playing with my cousin in Trem, and we had a lead, and we took advantage of going for the highlight reel play in that situation. Which obviously, when we're talking about the finishing moves earlier, that might not be the ideal spot to go for it in a CDL match, but when you're just messing around in friends and private match, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
But yes, I am. Thank you for showing the world of the Chall podcast the famous Bink assassinates Jim clip.
I mean, that clip has been spread in our group chat for like the last year, essentially. So I thought it was fair to show everybody what we've been talking about. So let's talk about week 3 matches. These are really, really important matches to finish up stage 2 group play and figure out the seeding for the stage 2 major. The first, so April Fool's Day, Thursday, we'll be seeing Dallas Empire versus the Florida Mutineers and Optic Chicago versus the surging Seattle Surge, I guess. So what do you think of Empire versus the Mutineers?
I feel like I gotta go with Dallas. I don't. Dallas has had their struggles in search lately, but the Florida Mutineers haven't exactly been like a top caliber search team this year. They've won a lot when Awakening is just absolutely going off, and even though they just beat Optic 6-5, that was Skies who actually went off, and Awakening didn't really have the best game. But regardless, I think Dallas is the pick here just because you expect them to bounce back after losing to Minnesota again, and I think as long as it doesn't come down to 2 searches again, Dallas should be able to close this one out.
I'll go with Florida in this one because Dallas has obviously not looked great. And Florida has the ability to beat a team like Dallas. They have so much talent. And I still think that Awakening and Skies, they might be one of the most talented duos in COD, period. But it's just about them turning up at the right time and at the same time. So it's tough for them, but I'll go with Florida here. I'll say 3-2. I think they'll win both searches and probably win a control or something to pull out that series. The second match of that day, we have to see Optic Chicago. They need to turn up. If they lose, they're pretty much guaranteed to finish in the bottom half of their group and end up in the losers bracket. I'm not sure the exact scenario, but there's a lot of 1-loss and 2-loss teams in their group, and if they don't win here, it's going to make it really difficult not to start in losers bracket 1 or round 2. So who do you got, Surge versus Optic?
I really want to pick Seattle just based off
Yeah.
of recent performances, but I'm going to go with Optic. I think they figure it out and are able to bounce back, but I just based on what we've seen recently, I actually wouldn't be surprised to see Seattle take it, which you told me this 2 weeks ago that I'm saying this, I'd probably be pretty surprised. Um, but yeah, I want to pick Seattle, but I'm going Optic.
I feel the same way. I can't pick Seattle because there's always the chance that Optic returns to being Optic and
Hmm.
Seattle essentially returns to being Seattle and not having their best performance because they even if Optic has a down series, Seattle needs to have a really good series to pull this off. And um, if Gunless shows up like he does and he drops a 1.6, we'll probably be saying like we should have picked Seattle, but I'm gonna go with Optic as well. On Friday, April 2nd, we have Toronto versus London as the first match, and then Atlanta versus LAG. I think we're both in agreement that FaZe will beat LAG. I don't think there's any disagreement there. But what do you think about Toronto, who picked up their first win with Insight, and London, who have looked really, really good in this stage?
Yeah, so I mean, the biggest noteworthy thing here is we're gonna have. I know, actually, we're not because of Paul X. I was gonna say we got two European teams playing as a joke, but
Yeah.
seventh, eight, 7/8 European. Um, yeah, I think this is actually a coin flip in my opinion. Really, both teams have had their moments so far in stage two. I could see London winning this one, but I'm gonna go Toronto 3-2.
I'll say London. I think they've looked really good, and they haven't given me really a reason to pick against them. I know they lost to New York, but those are really close maps, and they should have won. They should have finished out Express S&D,
Yeah.
and they did win that control. Had they done that, they would have been up 2-1 in that series. So
Yep.
who knows what happens there? Essentially, they're like in. I know Paris has been slumping, but I think of them in the same vein as they're a good team. They just need to close out maps, and they'll be a great team. They'll be able to beat really good teams all the time. So I'll go with London 3-1 here. Um, let's talk about the matches on Saturday. We have a rematch on a rematch of the Stage 1 Major, the Florida Mutineers versus the Paris Legion, Minnesota Rocker versus Seattle Surge, and the Subliners versus the Ultra. Let's talk about Mutineers Legion. Who do you have here?
Just before we do that, I'm just getting it on the record. I'm saying phase 3-0
Yeah,
in the
I
phase
want
Gorilla
phase
series.
302.
Just so we don't, break our streak of predicting every series.
Yeah.
But anyway, for Florida Paris, this is also one that I could see going either way, even
Hmm.
though, Paris is technically at the bottom of the group, Florida's tied for first. I could see it going either way. I'm pretty sure didn't Paris sweep them? Paris swept Florida in stage one group play, and then Florida beat them in the losers bracket of the major,
That
I
sounds
think.
right.
I'm
They
pretty
did.
sure that's how it happened.
I'm almost positive they played in group stage one groups, and I
Yeah.
obviously know that Florida won in the major.
I'm pretty sure London swept them in stage one group play, and then Florida beat them in the stage one major. So they played a bunch already this season. So that further, proves that it could go either way. But I'm gonna pick Florida this time. I'll say Florida 3-1. Not really sure what Paris is gonna win. Obviously, Paris beat Dallas in the search, but Paris also got smoked by Seattle on Miami search. And I remember Octane was talking on the flank about just how like they studied their VOD like 15 minutes before the match, and they studied Paris's VOD on Miami Search, and like Paris did everything that Seattle expected them to do. So maybe they go back to the lab over this last week and improve their search. But I still think Florida will take this one.
I have Paris because I vividly remember. I'm pretty sure I wrote the recap from their major loss to Florida, but they choked, I believe, in the search, the first search, and then I know they choked on raid hardpoint to lose the series. I think they were up by like 40 points, and they allowed Florida pretty much to get all of Kitchen and then the middle hill as well. So I think Paris, they should have beat them at the major in my opinion, and I think even with some of their losses this past week, I still think they'll be able to pull it off, but it'll really depend on how Florida looks against Dallas in that first match of
Mm-hmm.
the week. That's a big key. If they come out and they look like crap, I don't know, like it's really worrying if you're a Florida fan.
And that's also a big match for Optic in that sense because
Hmm.
um even if Florida loses to Dallas and Paris and drops to 2-3, and then Optic wins both of their matches and finishes. Oh no, they would be 3-2. Never mind. If Florida and Optic both finish 2-3, and they're the only 2-3 teams, Florida has that
Head-to-head.
tiebreaker because Florida has the head-to-head. So, yeah, we kind of touched on it earlier, but that like we said, Optic's gonna need some help to get into winner's bracket position. So big matches for Florida this week.
And it's a big match for Paris because they're in last place in
Yeah,
Group B. So a win is. I know they're not going to get into winners bracket unless something. I don't even know if they're able to, but in some tiebreaker scenario, it would have to be something crazy. But to go 2-3, you might not be the last place team, which could help you get through like losers bracket 1 or something like that.
sure.
The next match, Minnesota versus Seattle. Minnesota had a 2-0 week, and Seattle has been looking really good. Who you got?
I think it's going to be a good series. Based on stage one performance, you might not. Some people might not have thought that coming into stage two, but things have changed, and both teams are looking good, especially Minnesota after the recent change. So I'm going to go Minnesota.
Yeah, I'll go Minnesota too. I think their search will be the difference. Um,
But I do think it'll be a close series either way.
yeah, I'm pretty sure these teams met in group play of stage one, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't remember.
I think they did, and I think it was.
Well, yeah, because Dallas played Seattle.
Yeah.
Dallas, so that means Minnesota played them, yeah.
So I think back then we said it was pretty clear that Seattle. I don't know, like I think it was that Seattle couldn't. It wasn't. They weren't better than Minnesota in any game mode, and I still think that's true, even with Seattle being much improved. I think Minnesota has looked really good with Standy, and I think their search game is still there. So if they can pull off at least both of those searches, then I think they're good.
I think just on a side note, real quick, I think it's interesting too. Just in such a quick turnaround, after in stage one and after stage one, we were talking about, what changes Seattle going to have to make to the roster? Who should they bring in? All this, and now the conversation has changed too. Is Seattle going to be able to take down these teams? Are they going to finish in the winners bracket of stage two group play? So I already said, I'm happy for those guys, and I think it's a good narrative to see them turn things around, but. It's definitely interesting to see how quickly things have changed just from a narrative standpoint.
Yeah, I agree. Subliners Ultra, that's the final match of Saturday. Who do you have here?
I think you got to go New York. That's actually New York's only match of this week. They're 3-1, so they should be in good position to make winners bracket as long as they're able to take care of business against Toronto. Even if they lose, they probably still have a decent shot with tiebreakers and stuff to make winners bracket. But yeah, they control their own destiny there if they're able to close things out. So I think New York takes that. I'll say 3-1.
I'll say New York 3-0. They're really good. They with Dallas and Optic struggling so much, it looks like New York is the second best team in the league right now behind FaZe. As long as Dallas and Optic don't pick it up, they're the second place team in my opinion. It's unfortunate that they were in their group this stage and they don't get a top seed in the major, but it is what it is. But a win here would lock up second place in their group and help them for the major. Sunday, April 4th, we have Atlanta and London, LA Thieves and LAG, and Dallas versus Optic. So 3 big games. Who do you got? Atlanta versus London.
Atlanta 3-0.
Yeah, Atlanta 3-0. Although this is obviously Atlanta's toughest matchup this week with LAG also as their opponent. So hopefully it would be really cool if London, the team that didn't win at all in stage one, ends up breaking FaZe's win streak.
Yeah,
just
I
don't see
think.
that happening.
Yeah, I don't see it happening, but obviously, kind of touched on it earlier. This will be a good test for London. Obviously, we saw them play against New York, had the almost full sail, all that we've already touched on enough. But regardless, we think FaZe is going to win this, but it will still be interesting to see how London performs against the above and beyond best team in the game.
Second match of the day is the Battle of Los Angeles between the Thieves and Gorillas. LAG, they beat LA Thieves at the major. They upset them in the winner's bracket. Who do you have here?
Dude, it's tough and not for a good reason. Both teams have had their struggles. Uh, Most notably, Thieves with their recent roster change not working out this last week. Um, so I don't know, man. I feel like either team has a shot to win this. I'm gonna go with the Thieves, just based on like who they have on that roster and just the expectations for guys like Slasher and Kenny and TJ. Uh, you expect them to win a series like this. But I could see LIG winning it, and if the Thieves play like they did last week, I don't think they win this. I will still pick the Thieves regardless.
I'll pick the Thieves, but kind of reluctantly
You're not
because
happy about it.
no, because we saw LAG beat them. That was with Temp,
True.
but they beat them regardless, and they haven't looked so much better with Venom to make me think that there's going to be a huge change in result. But LAG's looked so much worse this stage as well that it makes me think that the Thieves will actually pull it out. I hope that both of these teams turn around because I mean there's what three world champions on Gorillas and
Yep.
one world champion, right? Slasher's
Yep.
the only world champion, so
Yep.
so much talent and so many great players, and I'd hate to see both of these LA teams just stink it up the rest of the season. Uh,
Yeah, and you got to think too. Slasher, just the type of person he is. There's no shot he's happy with what happened last week.
no,
So you got to expect them to be grinding this week and practicing hard and trying to figure out whatever they can. It's a quick turnaround, obviously, and this is their only match of the week. So they can't really, they're sitting at 1-3 in their group, so they're most likely looking at a losers bracket run if they want to make anything happen in the stage 2 major. So this is more practice for them. They just got to get more time with more reps and more time with Venom and try to figure things out.
the final match of the week is what we would have assumed is the match for the first seed. I guess it could be depending on how things shake out in their group this week. Dallas is actually holding the first seed right now in their group, and Optic is holding fifth. But there's so much to come this week with all the matches. So Dallas versus Optic, who do you have here?
Well, I don't think just obviously we don't know all the tiebreaker situations, but
Yeah,
just thinking about it, with Dallas at 2-1 right now and Optic at 1-2, I don't think there's a situation where this is actually a match for first place, because if Dallas beats Florida to kick off the week, they're 3-1, and even if Optic beats Surge, they're 2-2.
then they could be
So then
three
I
and
guess
two, and they could
they
tie
would both be
Dallas.
3-2, and they could tie. Yeah. Wow. So all right. Regardless of that, I think based on last week's performances, you have to pick Dallas here. The mode Dallas has struggled in, kind of beating a dead horse, but at this point, but the mode Dallas has struggled in is Search, and that's been Optics. The mode that they haven't seen the most success in this year so far. So it's not like they have that to rely on to try and pull off. I guess you would consider it an upset. It was in the stage 1 major where we saw them face off in the winners back, and it was a super close match. Came down to game 5, round 11, I believe, with Dallas winning that one. So if Dallas beats Optic when they're at what we consider, well, not going to say they're at their peak then, but they were definitely better in the stage 1 major than they played last week. So if Dallas can beat them, then you expect Dallas to beat them here. So I'll say Dallas 3-1.
I'll say Optic 3-2. Neither of these teams have looked good, and while I agree with you, Optic, their worst game mode by far has been Search, and it's not that they're bad in Search,
Yeah.
but I think that works to their favor that Dallas is not a particularly strong Search team, and they look a lot worse from their stage 1 performance. I think Optic bounces back this week. Maybe if they crush Surge in their first match of the week, they get that momentum, they get that confidence, and they finish strong in the week. Like you said, I do think they could finish first. It would be incredible, to see a team that started the week in 5th place out of 6 teams end up in first place and grab the first seed in that group. I don't know if it will happen, but they definitely have a shot, especially with how poorly and inconsistent some of the teams in between them have played.
So just real quick, just like trying to do this mental math in my head. We have Dallas beating. If we say Dallas beats Florida, right?
Yeah.
That means Dallas would be 3-1. Florida would be 2-2.
Uh huh.
And if Optic beats Surge, then we have Surge, Florida, Rocker, and Optic all at 2-2.
Mhm.
So then, if Rocker, well, regardless of Rocker or Surge, who wins that, there's another team that's 3-2.
Mhm.
And then whoever would win, I don't know. I already lost my train of thought.
I
I was
think
trying to.
if they
There's a lot of stuff that can
yeah,
happen.
I think essentially there could be a three-way tie with say
Yeah,
Dallas,
that's what I was
Minnesota,
trying
and
to work my way
Optic,
to.
and then it would come down to map count between the 3 teams. So, say Optic, they lost 0-3 to Minnesota, but they sweep Dallas. They would have a 3-3. Dallas would
Mm-hmm.
have like a 2-6 or something, and then
Yeah,
Minnesota would probably get that first seed, considering they beat both teams. So Minnesota, here you go. You might get first seed in this
that'd be
group.
incredible.
Yeah, especially because they
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 were 0-2 before bringing in Standy.
and they didn't even win a match at the major in stage one. So it would be incredible.
Wow. Yeah,
So a lot of things can happen. We expect this is a really important week, and I'm really excited to see how things shape up. Um,
definitely.
so you want to talk about this new meta and the balance changes and everything?
Yeah, we don't have to talk about it too much. Like I was saying to you before we went live, and for all our viewers now or whoever listens later, um, there was a balance update for Black Ops Cold War multiplayer on the 30th, so yesterday, and I don't expect these changes to go into effect for the CDL. So earlier in stage one, there was a change with Crossroads Hardpoint where they moved where the fourth hardpoint location was in multiplayer, but the CDL stayed on the previous patch and kept the old hardpoint location. So based on that, I'm expecting them to continue to play on the previous patch for the remainder of stage two. And then in stage three, we could potentially see these balance changes that we're going to talk about. But I think obviously the big takeaway, I'm just going to go to the patch notes real quick. There was major weapon tuning for multiple weapons. Bear with me for a second. So the whole list was I'll just read it real quick. In Season 2 Reloaded, Treyarch implemented tuning to make the Krig 6 FFAR, which is the FAMAS, and the Groza more competitive in the assault rifle class, while adjusting the Milano, KSP, LC-10, MAC-10, and AK-74U in the SMG class. Obviously, that's going to have the most impact in the competitive scene with the use of ARs and subs. But just most notably, I played a few Games Battles matches before we went live with the podcast tonight, and the Krig just feels really good. It was already a super accurate weapon, and it just felt even more of a laser beam after this update. The 74U was nerfed according to the patch notes. They reduced the accuracy with prolonged firing and reduced the muzzle velocity by 23.4%, whatever that means. We still were using the 74U tonight, though, in Game Battles matches. You could tell it was changed a little bit, but it was still a good gun. It might not be as dominant as it was before, obviously, but I still think it's a viable option. But the biggest change hits the Milano. Tremor and I were both using it out, and that thing shreds. And I know I sent you just a few clips so that
Yeah, I'll put up right now.
not trying to brag with these clips in any sense, but I think it's important when we're talking about these balance changes that we can at least show some visual evidence that the Milano just shreds now.
Yeah. Put it up on stream. If you want to see this clip, you're listening on, say, Apple Podcasts or Spotify, go to our YouTube channel and check out the VOD. It's just a clip of Bink and Trim using the updated Milano on
I
Crossroads.
literally disintegrated that guy. I couldn't believe it. Both of them.
And then there's another clip here from Jetpacker J, the coach. So,
I
yeah,
didn't even think about that earlier. The people listening in audio form aren't going to be able to see this, but
that's okay.
uh,
I think a lot of people like end up checking our YouTube, so it's a good plug for us.
sure.
And
Yeah.
and if you're also listening, I have the patch notes pulled up on our screens right now. You go to .esports.com. We wrote about the patch notes. Our friend Scott wrote about them the other day, so go check them out. Go check out all of our Call of Duty coverage.
Yeah. Um, but again, just want to stress, obviously, that I don't expect this balance patch to impact stage 2 at all. Probably won't go into effect till stage 3, so it shouldn't matter for the CDL for a couple of weeks now. But if you're going to be playing Cold War online, league play, whatever it may be, this is the patch you're going to be playing on. So you might be seeing more of the Milano in particular in league play. So just prepare for that. And it'll definitely be interesting once this patch is implemented, whenever that may be, to see how the meta is affected again. Maybe we'll see the Milano used over the 74U. I'm not quite sure. Otherwise, or I don't know why I said otherwise, but the Milano still shoots slow. Like the 74U shoots faster. I don't know how to really describe it. It's just a slower gun, not in a running sense, but it feels slower to shoot than the 74U.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, for those of you watching who see in those clips, the thing just absolutely is a laser beam right now. We haven't had a lot of weapon tuning updates in Black Ops Cold War this year. We're already in April, and I can only think of like 2 or 3 off the top of my head. When they nerfed the FAMAS at the beginning of the game, and this one might be the second one, which would be crazy.
We were actually
But
talking about it in a recent
yeah,
episode, how there hasn't been very
yeah, there
much.
hasn't been a lot, regardless of what there's been. There hasn't been a lot. I don't know the exact number at the top of my head, but yeah. So that's just we might be seeing more of the mono, which I like it. Even before this most recent update, I thought it was like obviously the 74U is just far and away the best sub in the game,
Mm-hmm.
so it didn't make sense to use the Milano at all. But I liked it when I was leveling it up in multiplayer and playing with it in zombies. It wasn't a bad gun before this, in my opinion, and now it's just an even better gun. So I'll definitely be excited to see if it's used in pro play whenever this patch comes into effect.
Yeah. Like you said, it they typically hold off on using any of like the new updates unless it's they're trying to fix something game breaking or some kind of glitch. So we probably won't see any of the new changes until stage 3, which will be I think stage 3 begins in like late April because we have the final week here
Yeah.
and then we have the major next weekend, and then we have a week off, which we're having a big drinking night. We assume on the week off, and then it would start the second or the last week in April, stage 3.
Yep, stage 3 starts April 22nd,
Yeah.
according to an old graphic I had.
So about 4 weeks away from that. So and that's good. It gives players time to get adjusted to how these new guns are going to perform. See if
Yep.
there are any big meta changes. I know that there's been a lot of complaints. I think Slasher's been the biggest name, but he's been complaining about how they're not able to practice uh, the same way that they're able to play. And
On the 60 hertz servers or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
the spawns are messed up and things aren't as they should be. So we'll see how that goes and see if that's fixed at all. Josh has a question. What match would you like to see most in round 1 of the major, both for winners and losers?
I think the easy answer Shit. FaZe can't play in round one, so that takes away my easy answer. I was gonna say FaZe versus Minnesota, just because we've seen Minnesota take down Dallas and Optic now. If Minnesota keeps playing at this level, it's gonna be interesting to see how they perform against Atlanta. So I guess looking at for the winners bracket side, it would be second and A versus third and B, and vice versa. So that's most likely going to be New York versus one of many teams. So I will just say New York versus Optic.
I think that's real. It's realistic.
Yeah, if Optic's able to get third, New York finishes second in Group A. That'll be good because we saw them play twice in the last major. There's that little drama between Clay and Dashy. So I think from a storyline perspective, that would be the match I most want to see in round one of winners. Round one of losers would be last place in both groups versus fifth place in the other groups. I don't know who's going to come in fifth place in Group B, unless, Optic just continues to struggle. I'm going to say... Oh, geez, there's a scenario where wow. Okay, so I'll just say this. It contradicts what I just said with New York for Chicago, but I guess the spiciest potential losers bracket match in round one would be if Thieves come in last in Group A and Optic come in fifth in Group B. And we have Thieves versus Optic to kick off the tournament, and one team gets top 12. That would be nuts.
Yeah. I'm down with that. I'm also down with New York versus Dallas to kick off winners round one.
Sure.
That I guess it's realistic as well if Optic beats Dallas and you have like Minnesota, Dallas, and Optic all 3-2 at the top, and due to tiebreakers, Dallas would finish third. So I'll say New York versus Dallas in winners, and in losers, I don't know. I want to see like you said, if say Optic and LA Thieves faced off in a losers go home match in the first round of the major, that's ridiculous. But that's what we should get. That's what we all want.
No, nobody wants that if they're Optic or LA Thieves fans.
Yeah, but for the 10% of the COD community that's not Optic or Thieves fans, who are all FaZe fans presumably, you would want that. I mean, that would be incredible drama to start off the major. To be different though, I'll say Florida versus Toronto, because I want to see what Toronto has. Well, actually, London versus Florida. I mean, those two teams are really good when they're at the top of their game. Especially in this stage, we've seen London really improve, and I obviously just have a lot of faith in Florida. I think they're so good. But I would love to see that kind of match. I'm not sure if they could actually finish in losers, both of them in losers, but, well, they obviously can, but I don't know if they will. So that's what I would say for that. Yeah.
That's a good question. Thanks, Josh.
Yeah, any more questions or topics, let us know. And we'll stick around for a few more minutes before signing off.
I really gotta go to the bathroom.
Thoughts on if Standoff came in, needs to come in next Battle Pass season after this upcoming major? What map should it replace if so?
Checkmate.
Yeah.
Just get rid of Checkmate. Easy answer.
Yeah, probably.
But I do agree. We've talked about Standoff in previous episodes. If it comes in, it's got to be right at the start of Season 3, which would then hopefully be implemented by the time Stage 3 starts. Yeah, that would be, I guess Trem just puts in there Standoff for hardpoint and search, or Standoff, hardpoint, and search to replace Checkmate, but leave Checkmate control. That would be interesting. I guess it would depend on where the Standoff control points would be, since obviously we don't have any idea of how that would play out.
I personally hate Garrison hardpoint, so I would replace that. But that's just from like a viewer's perspective. I think that map should just get nuked and we should never see it again. But that's just my opinion. But I would love for Standoff to come in for any of those maps except Raid.
Yeah, and that we've talked on it before too. If Standoff doesn't come in by the time stage 3, I don't want it to come in at all, just because it would be like a waste. We would only have it for very little time, and I feel like that would be a wasted opportunity for such a historic map in COD.
Yeah, we need. I know there's been rumors that the next COD will be World War II based, but I would love to see like Ardennes Forest come in just for the nostalgia. I think every COD should bring back like one good competitive map per season, and then hopefully release one. I don't know. I think yeah, I think that would be cool. But
Yep.
yeah, if there's no other questions, we'll wrap up this episode so Ben can go to the bathroom and I can go to bed and stuff. So make sure to subscribe on whatever platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, whatever. Apple Podcasts, give us 5-star rating. It really help us. This episode will be out on Wednesday, March 31st.
Yep. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. And as always, send that Chall.